30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Oh, baby! What up, Bills Mafia? Let's get that strobe going. There she is. What up, Bills Mafia? Z-Bot here with you. Wednesday night, it is the smoke break, and I'm so glad you decided to share your Wednesday night with me. Rainy day up here near me in Rochester, New York, but a hot one. I got to tell you, it has been hotter than blazes out lately, but I guess that's what happens when July's tomorrow. Pinch me. I have no idea where the month went. Fastest month of all time. June's in the books. July tomorrow. Hope everybody's summer is off to a good start and you're enjoying yourself. We're going to enjoy ourselves tonight and kind of just get some stuff off our chest. And I want you to join me in the comments and do so yourself, because if there's one thing I've realized over the last couple of weeks, it's that we need football back more than ever. And no, it's not just because we want to watch football. We want to root on the Bills. It's because we need the nonsense on Twitter to stop. And the only way it's going to go away is if football comes back and we can focus on actual games. Because right now, Buffalo Bills social media is consumed by baseless and unbelievably ridiculous arguments. And it's all you see when you go on any of your timelines. There's a few of them we're going to dive into tonight. But the one I want to start with is the one that seemed to pick up the most fire over the last week or so. And that is the title in which you saw in the thumbnail of this video. Did Stefon Diggs make Josh Allen? Did Stefon Diggs turn Josh Allen into an MVP caliber quarterback? Vice versa, the question was being asked, did Josh Allen make Stefon Diggs one of, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL? And people are having these arguments. These are actual arguments people are having. And I sit back, I don't entertain or get involved in any of them. I sit back and I guess where I get my entertainment value is the fact that people actually find a way to argue about this. The answer is yes. Yes, Stefon Diggs made Josh Allen an MVP caliber quarterback. Yes, Josh Allen made Stefon Diggs one of the best wide receivers in the league. They both helped each other turn the Buffalo Bills into one of the best football teams in the NFL, a Super Bowl contender. Where I'm starting to get confused here is that people are trying to find ways to criticize top-tier talent any way they can. And now we're getting to the point where we're blaming players for being surrounded by other good players. Now, all of a sudden, it's a knock on Josh Allen that he has one of the best wide receivers in the league on his team, when he started his career with his best wide receiver being Kelvin Benjamin. Why all of a sudden is it a downfall of a top-level talent player to be surrounded by other top-tier talent? If anything, this should be praised. There is no award given to any player in the league for being on a bad team. Let's take Matthew Stafford, for example. He is the perfect example of what I'm talking about here. Matthew Stafford spent 12 years with the Detroit Lions. Didn't win a single playoff game. At the same time, Matthew Stafford is also statistically on pace to finish his career in the top 10 amongst all-time passing yard leaders. Matthew Stafford, at this point in his career, is probably going to wind up being one of the better talents to come through the league, one of the better arm talents to come through the league. Yeah, it's been 12 years since Matthew Stafford has come into the National Football League, and nobody cares. You want to know when they started caring? A couple months ago, when the LA Rams decided to trade for him. Why all of a sudden is Matthew Stafford relevant again? Because he is on a good team. He is surrounded by good players. And that in turn is going to make Matthew Stafford relevant again. It's going to make him perhaps arguably a top quarterback in this league this year. No one's criticizing Matthew Stafford for going to the Rams. No one's criticizing the Rams for bringing Matthew Stafford in. He's now on a good team, and nobody is expecting Matthew Stafford to not have anything but one of his best seasons or his best season overall since he's been in the league. Top level talent is being used to elevate each and every team in a Super Bowl window. That's how you become a winning culture. You surround your star players with other star pieces. And I think the Matthew Stafford argument is the perfect example when you're talking about Allen or Diggs. Because look at Matthew Stafford. He was irrelevant for over a decade, despite the fact that he might have been one of the better quarterbacks in the league during that time. But now all of a sudden, he gets Sean McVay. He goes out to a big market. He goes to a team who has one of the best defenses in the league. And now Matthew Stafford's being praised. Now the Rams are a Super Bowl favorite. Now the Rams, everybody's looking out for him, right? But why is it when we come to Josh Allen that it's a downfall of his, that his game was elevated because a top-level receiver was brought to the Bills? This should be praised because at the end of the day, any franchise in the NFL is in pursuit of one thing, and that's winning. And in order to do that, you have to have the best players possible on your team. And of course, that starts with the quarterback. The Bills do that. Then what happens? They see in the first year he's got no weapons. And it was obvious that Allen had talent. We all knew this right out of the gate. Despite it being raw, which we also knew, we knew his ceiling was immeasurable. So Bean goes out and adds pieces. We bring in Cole Beasley. And what do we see? We see John Brown. And he asserts himself into a much larger role. The Bills make the playoffs under Josh Allen. And they're a wild play against Deshaun Watson away from winning a playoff game. The following year, Diggs comes in and the Bills are a game away from the Super Bowl. So we talk about this trend with Allen constantly. Of course, he's gotten better as the talent around him has gotten better. Who wouldn't? What would Michael Jordan be without Scottie Pippen? He didn't win a single ring without him. The best players in the world in any situation have to have sound surrounding pieces. And to diss that player, that star player, for having pieces around him is absurd to me. And people are on Twitter making arguments that Josh Allen isn't that good. It's just that Stephon Diggs is unbelievable all of a sudden. And he's the reason Josh Allen was second in the MVP votes last season. It makes no sense. Look at it from Stephon Diggs' side. He was dying to leave Minnesota. Why? He was sick and tired of getting the ball from Kirk Cousins. Now, Kirk Cousins isn't even close to one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. He's a mid-level talent, Kirk Cousins. He's better than, I would argue, 10-plus quarterbacks in the NFL. You know, it wasn't like he was on Denver. It wasn't like Stephon Diggs was catching balls from Nathan Peterman. Kirk Cousins at one point in this NFL life was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Did he deserve it? Probably not. But he had proven himself up until that point to deserve a contract. But Diggs knew he could get better, and he was in search of it. And I guarantee you, Stephon Diggs would not have willingly went to Buffalo had he not thought that Josh Allen would elevate his game. We see it now. Players will flat out refuse to go to certain teams that they know will not benefit their career. They'll tell their agent, don't even entertain a trade. Don't even entertain a move. Stephon Diggs knew that there was a possibility, a big possibility, that if he left Minnesota and went to Buffalo, his career was going to flourish. And it did. So yes, Stephon Diggs became a much better wide receiver because Josh Allen was throwing him the ball. And on the flip side, of course, Josh Allen becomes a top 3 quarterback in the NFL because he has Stephon Diggs. And these pieces together not only benefit each other, they benefit the whole team. That was the cornerstone of the entire football team, ladies and gentlemen. Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. The Bills would not have been in the position they were last season without those two. I mean, let's face it. The Bills had a very average defense and next to no run game. They went 13-3, and they lost to the reigning champs in the AFC Championship game. And that was because, in most part, of Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. So for anybody out there trying to pit those two together and find an argument between the two, that to me is absurd. It's a waste of time. There's no right answer other than saying, yes, Josh Allen made Stephon Diggs, and Stephon Diggs made Josh Allen. If we go back last season, if Stephon Diggs stayed in Minnesota, he would not have led the league in receiving yards. And I have a good feeling that if Stephon Diggs was not on the Bills probably would have not found themselves in the AFC Championship, and I'm not sure Josh Allen would have been second place in the MVP votes. So that to me was something that I could not go on Twitter without seeing, and I really could not understand why I was seeing it. And now there seemed to be plenty of people who had very strong opinions on either side. And I know how we get, Bills Mafia. We will fall on the sword for Josh Allen, and I get it. I would too. But not in this particular argument, because there's not an argument to be had. You cannot, you cannot look at this particular situation and find a way to discredit Josh Allen's talent because of Stephon Diggs. And you cannot find a way to discredit Diggs' talent based on Josh Allen. Now, I think the argument towards Josh Allen making Diggs is the easier one to make because the wide receiver is at the mercy of the quarterback. The wide receiver can only do so much based on what the quarterback talent is. And that, of course, is why Stephon Diggs wanted to leave Minnesota in the first place. So, yes, I can understand why the argument might lean more towards saying Josh Allen made Stephon Diggs. But what's Josh Allen's year last year without him? It's not close to what we saw, right? Because we saw a very similar skill set the year prior, and the Bills the Bills last season in comparison to 2019, the gap was major. It was major. So look at it that way. When you're reading this, whatever you want to call it, it's just flat out BS. When you're reading this, when you're seeing it, take into account the fact that there is no argument to be had there. Now, I also like to look on the bright side of these things, and I think it's funny that you have such great talent on your team that you're trying to find an argument in which to justify why they're so good. See, this is the silver lining I find in these things. I see people arguing back and forth about a baseless argument, and I take it as, you know what that tells me? We got arguably the best wide receiver in the league, arguably the best quarterback in the league. Go nuts. Because everybody arguing back and forth is just telling me what I already need to hear. When there's criticism, that means that you're relevant. That means that you are good, right? Paul George the other day, Paul George, NBA, plays for the Clippers if you're not a basketball person. He had come out and said that he was one of the he's the most criticized player in the NBA or something like that. If you haven't been keeping track of the NBA playoffs, Paul George has been playing incredible for the Clippers while Kawhi Leonard is injured. And I was listening to Colin Cowherd earlier today, and he made a terrific point. And so did Charles Barkley on the postgame show the other night after the Clippers game. at the end of the day, what it comes down to is when you are that type of player, when you are so above the rest, when you're considered to be one of the best, all you're going to get is criticism. And you don't hear much criticism about players who aren't very good. And the reason you're not hearing that criticism is because there's nothing to criticize. It's a known fact. They're not very good. But when you're very, very, very good, people are going to try to find a fault in your game anywhere they can. And if the fault in Allen's game is the fact that he has one of the best wide receivers in the league that he's throwing the ball to, I'll take that any day of the week. That is a problem we desperately want to have, Bills fans. And an added bonus, the Bills just might have one of, if not the best wide receiver locker room in the NFL to boot outside of Stephon Diggs. So you look at this and you continuously try to understand why people discredit Allen and his success because Diggs was on the team. Do you think Peyton Manning would have been what he was without Marvin Harrison, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski? I don't understand how we can discredit amazing players because they're surrounded by other amazing players. These teams don't get to where they're at without these guys. So arguing whether one's better than the other is a null point because they're on the same team and their success is going to be determined within each other. So you can't find a right or wrong answer based on comparing whose talent is better and whose talent translates into the others. Makes no sense. The other argument that I continuously saw on Twitter this week, and it always comes back to Josh Allen, doesn't it? And this is where like I just mentioned, the silver lining in all of these is that Allen is always the point of some argument, right? Always. Whether he's ranked too high on the Chris Sims list, which I'll get into in a minute here, the Chris Sims quarterback list in which he was ranked the second best quarterback in the league, according to Chris Sims' list on Pro Football Talk, or he's ranked too low, ranked 6th for PFF. There's always an argument surrounding Allen, but the silver lining to me is there's arguments because he has asserted himself into a position where he's in the limelight and he's going to get criticized. I love it. You know, there was no quarterback for me growing up as a Bills fan that was worth criticizing. There wasn't, because it was just a known fact that the Bills had a mid to low tier quarterback who'd be lucky to win 9 games. But when you assert yourself into the top tier of the league, you are going to be talked about constantly, good and bad. And we do it. We do it too. I mean, look at what we did with Tom Brady for 20 years. But we did that because we knew in our heart of hearts that Tom Brady was the GOAT. He owned us and there was nothing we could do about it. It feels good to be in that position now, Bills fans, doesn't it? Feels good to be in the driver's seat. This isn't quite what Patriots fans felt for that amount of time, but I imagine it was something like this. It's a feeling you have where you know, man, we got one of the best guys in the league on our team. And you almost don't know what to do with it. And neither do your opponents. And the opponents, what do? They sit back and they try to compare, contrast, and discredit you at all times. The big one, in addition to the who made who, Diggs or Allen, the big one was who's better, Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson? And if I got to see this one more time on my Twitter, I might deactivate it. It is incredible. It is incredible the stance that fans from Baltimore have on Lamar Jackson in comparison to Allen. It's incredible what Cleveland Browns fans have with Baker Mayfield in comparison to Josh Allen. I feel like you don't continuously make these arguments unless you're just flat out jealous. And I think these teams, these fan bases of those other teams are jealous, and rightfully so. The big one this week was Lamar Jackson and Allen, in which I think by now those two have solidified themselves as the best of that class. Baker Mayfield's probably the third. I don't think I'd take Baker Mayfield at this given time over Lamar Jackson. You could make the argument, but I think at this point, Josh Allen has solidified himself as the top guy, and I think many would say Lamar Jackson is in the 2 spot. And that's why I think those two are being put together on Twitter as a rivalry based on who's better and who's worse. There are so many arguments here in favor of Allen that I just don't quite understand I don't understand how the Ravens fans can continuously try and find ammunition to unload on Bills fans on Twitter. Lamar Jackson is the best running quarterback in the league. It's undisputed, right? He's incredible, and he's one of the best that'll ever go down to do it. What people fail to realize is Josh Allen might be the second or third best. Josh Allen right now, since he's come into the league, leads the league in rushing touchdowns. So you're getting close to a similar characteristic in Lamar Jackson, who's the best of the best in that category. You're getting a slight downgrade from his best skill set. But on top of that, you're getting an infinite upgrade in what matters most at the quarterback position, and that's throwing the football. And there's not a soul on the planet who knows football that would take Lamar Jackson to throw a game-winning ball over Josh Allen. There's not a single person in the world that knows football that could make a clear-cut argument that in a game in which there were no rushes allowed, that they would take Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen has solidified himself as one of the best in the league in regard to just simply throwing the ball. He probably has the longest range in the NFL at this given time. He can probably throw the ball the deepest. His accuracy has improved tremendously, and his ability to throw the ball on the run right now, I would say there's a tier where it's probably Mahomes, Rodgers, and then Allen, and that might be it. I mean, there really is very few quarterbacks that can make the plays that those three make. And I have yet to see Lamar Jackson show off the skill set that Josh Allen has presented to the league since he's come into it. Lamar Jackson is a terrific quarterback, a terrific young quarterback who I mentioned in last week's show will probably get paid similar money to Josh Allen when these new contracts come out. And the reason for that is because in this day and age in the league, when you have a guy who is considered to be unarguably a top 10 quarterback, they are going to get paid an absurd amount of money. And when you see that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson come from the same draft class, they have both been top competitors within the AFC the last couple of years. It's not going to shock me when the money value comes out and their financial situation is very similar. But go ahead and find me the list right now from any reputable source that has Josh Allen ranked below Lamar Jackson. And I know if you're a regular viewer, which I know many of you are, you constantly hear me talk about these rankings in a tone that's just take them for what they are, rankings. And there's somebody sitting at a desk coming up with them. I mean, that's all they are. It's somebody's opinion. But with that said, these rankings, I mean, there is some validity to them. The people making these, it's not just Joe Blow on the street. Chris Sims, very reputable. I have a lot of respect for Chris Sims. He makes the list. The PFF guys, love him or hate him, they're analytical, very intelligent. They know football better than most of us. They make these lists. Yes, you take them with a grain of salt, but they give you an accurate representation of what NFL media thinks of certain quarterbacks, of certain players. And there's not a single list that I have been able to find that has Lamar Jackson ranked higher than Josh Allen. Josh Allen just beat Lamar Jackson in a divisional playoff game. None of us sit here and say Josh Allen's better than Patrick Mahomes at this given point in time. Josh Allen can't beat Patrick Mahomes. So why the hell would I sit here and say Josh Allen is better than him? He has yet to prove that. It's not true. Could he wind up being? Sure. I don't think we've seen Allen's ceiling yet. But at this moment right now, June 30th, 2021, Josh Allen, no, he's not better than Patrick Mahomes. He has not been able to prove that. But in the biggest stage imaginable for those two quarterbacks to go against each other, Josh Allen won. And not only did Josh Allen win, but Lamar Jackson choked the game away. Josh Allen has 42 touchdowns in the red zone and 0 interceptions in his NFL career. Lamar Jackson threw a red zone interception against Josh Allen in the biggest game of those two's career at that point to lose the game. So are there attributes to Lamar Jackson that many will argue consider him to be better than Josh Allen? Potentially. Come down to the running game. I understand it. He's one of the best we'll ever see. But who in their right mind wouldn't take a slight downgrade at the running game from the quarterback for a massive upgrade in the throwing department? And that's what you're getting when you're comparing Josh Allen to Lamar Jackson. Now, at the end of the day, these are just these Twitter arguments. I think they're fun. It's funny to see people get riled up, of course. But, I mean, a lot of times people just get lost in irrationality. And there's really no rational argument, I think, right now. Oh, I forgot the biggest one. Here it is, of course. How could I leave this out? The one I saw getting the most traction on Twitter the last few days was it was some Ravens fan. He tweeted out, here's something Josh Allen can't do. And it was Lamar Jackson holding the MVP trophy. He can't do it, huh? Josh Allen can't win the MVP. He lost it to Aaron Rodgers last year. And there's politics within these MVP votes. Rodgers has very few years left compared to Allen. That's taken into consideration. How many more years does Aaron Rodgers have to win an MVP? Not many, right? So if it comes down to him and Allen, where Allen didn't blow him out of the water in regard to stats or wins, you're going to give it to the guy with the seniority. You're going to give it to the guy who has fewer years left, right? That's just the way it goes. It's the politics of sports. But if Aaron Rodgers had a slightly worse year last year, Josh Allen wins the MVP. He finished second. So for Ravens fans to say, here's something Josh Allen can't do, as the tweet shows a picture of Lamar Jackson holding the MVP trophy, give me a break. That is a senseless argument. Josh Allen can't win an MVP. Okay. Yet he finished second. I would much rather take a second place MVP finish and a trip to the AFC Championship over an early exit and an MVP win. And I would also take more playoff wins than an MVP. And I think Josh Allen would too. He'd probably be the first one to tell you that, right? And that's where Josh Allen currently sits in comparison to Josh Allen. So, or Lamar Jackson, excuse me. So, I mean, that's that. I will stand that ground for the foreseeable future, and I don't really see a point in time coming where I think Lamar Jackson is going to be able to truly ascend over Allen, just because I don't think we've seen Allen's ceiling yet. And it goes for Browns fans, too, who continuously try to make this argument. And I just think that's not even worth touching on right now. And not for nothing, the Browns might have the best roster in the league. So if and when Baker Mayfield solidifies himself as a top 5 quarterback, I better start seeing the same arguments I'm seeing against Allen, right? Oh, well, Baker Mayfield's got one of the best rosters in the entire NFL. Of course, you know what I mean? What would Josh Allen be? What would Josh Allen be on the Cleveland Browns roster? Incredible defense, unbelievable run game, probably the best dual threat in the league, great wide receiver weapons, a solid O-line. I mean, you don't think Josh Allen would be far superior to what Baker Mayfield has put out with the Cleveland Browns in the same position? Give me a break. All right. Some cool news outside of getting bogged down with Twitter arguments. The NFL implements yet another awesome policy that I'm super stoked about. And I'm sure by now you have heard of it. And I got the perfect example of what we're going to be looking forward to very soon. And that is additional helmets being able to be worn by NFL teams. Now, this is something that always puzzled me. Why wasn't this a thing to begin with? The constant argument was it was a safety reason, and that the reason that teams couldn't switch helmets was because of a safety protocol. And I never quite understood that. Why would one helmet not be as safe as the other helmet? I think people were saying it's because you don't break it in as much, you don't wear it as much. It must not be that true, because the NFL, if it was really that significant of an injury increase switching helmets, I don't think the NFL would have made this switch. But here we see them do it. And in 2022, teams will be able to wear different colored helmets. And I think it's awesome, because we're finally seeing the NFL come around to a lot of things that they probably should have done earlier, but they're finally realizing that it makes the game better and it makes the fan experience better. And that, at the end of the day, is what it all comes down to from a business standpoint. The NFL needs to make the fans happy, because without the fans, the NFL is nothing. It's not a multi-billion-dollar business. And they're seeing what works with the fan base. And a lot of times it's fun. They finally laxed up on the fact that players like to celebrate after they score a touchdown. Go figure. You don't say. Teams like to celebrate when they get in the end zone. That used to be flagged constantly. I know it seems like forever ago, but it wasn't. And now it's celebrated. There's the fan cam in the back of the end zone. I mean, as we know, when Teron Johnson picks off Lamar Jackson, as we were just talking about, the whole entire sideline makes their way over to the fan cam, and it's freaking awesome. And now you're getting, every week who had the best celebration. There's choreographed celebrations. It's awesome. Who doesn't love it? Just a few years ago, this was not allowed in the NFL. Just a few months ago, we see the NFL allow players to wear numbers that they weren't allowed to wear originally. So we're seeing the ability for linemen to wear lower numbers. I think it's wide receivers can wear lower numbers as well. I forget the exact specifications, but essentially skill positions and different players on the field can wear uniform numbers that they weren't allowed to wear in the past. These are just little tidbits that we are seeing being implemented into the game that I think are awesome. And I constantly compare the NFL to both the NBA and the MLB. I think the NBA does this stuff far too much. Their foot is on the gas far too heavy. The other night I turned into the Milwaukee Bucks playoff game, and they had a jersey on that was like teal blue. The Milwaukee Bucks are green, black, and white. And if I didn't know the final four teams left in the NBA, I would not have known who was playing. Say the scoreboard was not in the bottom corner. I would not have known who it was. These NBA teams, each of them have like 12 different jerseys. Now, I love the different styles, and they're cool. Don't get me wrong. And I'm sure the jersey sales for the NBA are through the roof. I mean, they definitely look cool, but there's no semblance. There's no notoriety. I tune in and I don't know who's playing. And I think for the NFL, a lot of it is rooted within tradition. I mean, you'll never see the Dallas Cowboys wear anything but the star on the side of their helmet. You'll never see the Steelers put the Steelers logo on both sides. There's just things that you don't do, right? And if you did it, I don't think it would really work. If the Cleveland Browns put a logo on their helmet, it would look weird. There's certain things you don't do. And I find in the NBA, they almost seem to do things too much. And I think that's kind of a marketing ploy. They're constantly trying to reach a new audience. I don't know how well the ratings for the NBA have done. They're not what the NFL is. Then you look at the MLB, and it's just, they're stuck in the 1800s. The games take 5 hours. There's 300 of them a year. And it's just boring. I mean, I enjoy the MLB playoffs because there's some urgency to it. The games matter. But for the MLB, for the majority of the year, you can sleep through 2 months and it doesn't make a difference. And in the MLB, there's so many rules that are made to make the game less fun, slower paced. And I think the NFL has a perfect middle ground between the two. But there's room for improvement. So when I look at the NBA, I just think that there's too much. I look at the NFL and they're creeping right towards where they should be. But I think that there's a few other things that they could get away with implementing that would be a lot of fun. The helmet is a good first start. It's awesome. Now, what else can we do with that? Because I keep seeing these awesome Photoshop mocks online of teams in retro jerseys with the older helmets. But as of right now, that's not really in the cards. The Bills don't have it in their, let's say, closet, if you will, to pull out what you see Jim Kelly behind me wearing. Those old, awesome, I don't even know how you would quite describe it, but I love those uniforms with the red helmet. They're gorgeous. I think it's their best uniform combo. Now, what we all hate, of course, what you see Drew Bledsoe right behind my shoulder here wearing, the Navy. Now, that's not Buffalo. But I got to tell you, I think it would be fun if for one Sunday, the Bills pulled out the old all navy blue, just for fun. The nostalgia factor it would have. I grew up with that as a kid, the Bills in the all navy. And to see a good Bills team in the all navy, that would be something I never saw in my whole life. Now, I'm not here saying, I know people are going to be like, oh my God, Z-Bot wants the Bills to wear the navy blue. Believe me, I am fully aware that they're the worst jerseys the Bills have had. I will sit here and stand my ground when I say that I think it would be cool as hell if they came out one weekend and rocked them. Elliot's bringing up a point here that I was about to get into. NFL should have a throwback week and celebrate the history of the NFL. Let the teams rock the old units for a week and do it early before the bye week so all can participate. Absolutely, Elliot, you read my mind. This is what I was getting into. You see all these Photoshop mock-ups of the red helmet on the Bills with the old Jim Kelly unis. Saw some awesome mock-ups of the Philadelphia Eagles in those old limeish green jerseys with that awesome Eagles logo, the full flying eagle with the lime green helmets. Love those. And I hate to say it, but I saw a mock-up of Tom Brady in the old orange-sicle Tampa Bay Bucks jerseys with the white helmet and the buck that has the saber in his mouth. I think that's one of the coolest logos in the NFL. I was looking through all these mock-ups, and Elliot made the point right here in the comments that I was going to bring up. How unbelievably cool would it be if for 1 week, 2 weeks a year, the NFL does a league-wide throwback type thing where every team wears a throwback uniform? It wouldn't be like the NBA where you tune in on a random Tuesday and you can't tell who's playing because there was no announcement around the reason why a team's wearing a certain uniform or this or that. In the NFL, if they had a week dedicated to it, how amazing would that be? They could show throwback highlights all week on their social media. It would go crazy there. Everybody would buy the jersey. I don't care what jersey it would be, whether it be the Navy, the old 90s jerseys, whatever. I'm buying a Josh Allen jersey in that configuration. 100%. And I know a lot of you guys love your Bills memorabilia like I do. Your wallets would be wide open, and so would the rest of the fan base. I think everybody wins here. It's incredibly fun. Financially, the NFL gets a lot more out of it than they would if they didn't do it. And I just think it's a terrific idea. And you could play with it multiple ways. You could do like major throwback where you go, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever. Then you could do like early 2000s where a lot of teams had different style uniforms. There's so many different ways you can do it. If you guys remember when they did the AFL 50-year anniversary, I forget exactly how long ago it was, but the Bills were playing the Patriots. I believe it was a Monday night game. And the Bills had on the all-white throwback jerseys with the Standing Buffalo white helmets. And the Patriots had on their red unis with the helmet with the Patriot snap in the ball, which I also hate to admit is one of the cooler logos that is in the old school logo department. And then the refs were wearing old school orange uniforms like they used to wear back in the day. And I don't know when this was. This was over a decade ago, and I still remember that game simply due to the fact that they were wearing those uniforms. So think about the lasting power that had on me, and I'm sure a lot of you who can probably remember it as I'm talking about it. How the lasting power that had for a game that what Earl Scott's coming in here and saying was 2008. Thank you, Earl. So we're talking 13 years ago, and I still very well remember that game. Pretty sure Trent Edwards was the starting quarterback. The Bills, of course, lost. If I'm not mistaken, it was in very heartbreaking fashion. So I think it would be an absolutely incredible idea. Yes, Earl, you're on it, man. Historian here. McKelvin fumble. That was the game. So, yeah, maybe that's the reason why a lot of people remember that game. But I think I've blocked that part out. I was also 10. But I think I've blocked that part out and substituted it with the fact that the jersey uniforms or the combos were awesome. Another thing I think the NFL could do is open up to colored cleats. Alvin Kamara scored 6 touchdowns on Christmas Day wearing Christmas colored cleats, and it was awesome. And everybody's going to remember him. Everybody's going to remember the cleats. Everybody's going to remember that it was on Christmas that Alvin Kamara tied the record for most rushing touchdowns in a game with those cleats on. And he still got fined. He was the headline story all week for tying that record. And it was basically wrapped in a bow, no pun intended, for Christmas. It was wrapped in a bow with the fact that he had those cleats on. That was the story. And he still got fined. You're not allowed to wear cleats like that in the NFL. I think it would be amazing. And there's other things that you can do, and I think we'll see this happen. People forget gambling is getting huge in the NFL. Not that it already isn't, but it's getting widely accepted. Gambling here in New York is about to be legal on all digital platforms. It's already legal in most sports books here. There's one right down the road from me, about 45 minutes. They got a great sport book over at the Del Lago. Gambling's getting huge, and the bigger it gets, the more the NFL is going to need to implement it within the game because that's where the money's going to be. And I've been saying this for a very long time. If you put the gambling aspect of the game within the broadcast, which is what we're going to see soon, you can quote me on it. It's going to be cool because it adds so much more to the game than people realize. Even if you're not into gambling, there'll be games where there are actual blowouts that still matter if you have money on the line, the over-under, the spread. These things matter. And what does that do for the NFL? It makes every single game relevant. Instead of turning off a game where a team is up by 3 scores, you're more inclined to stay with it because maybe you have that game in your parlay on the over-under, or maybe you got a couple bucks on the spread. And if the losing team goes down and scores again, you lose. There's so many different elements to it. So as we see the NFL add these little elements like the helmet and the name or the number change and the celebrating in the end zone and stuff, we are going to see more changes come, and I'm excited to see what those wind up being. But the main point I wanted to make here was the helmets really got me thinking of what the NFL could do to really liven up the season, just simply based on aesthetics. And that would, of course, be doing something like that throwback week. I think it would be absolutely awesome. Gonna want to talk to you about Madden in just a minute here because the new Madden's coming out. I don't know how many of you play it, but I have some thoughts on the cover of it that I wasn't able to get into last week. But before I do that, want to get into the Lawnmower 4.0. And you guys know I love this thing. It's the new grooming product from our friends over at Manscaped, and the thing is awesome. I tell you guys every week that my favorite feature is the wireless charging system, and I'm going to say it again because I have one of these in my bathroom, and I take a look at it every time I walk in because to me, it just looks like you're looking at the future. You look at the thing and you're like, I can't believe that the thing I just shaved my butt cheeks with is charging wirelessly. It is truly the future. Not only does it have that, it's got that awesome multi-on-off function switch that has a travel lock on it, so you can throw it in the bag and travel with it. And it also has that LED spotlight. So if you're like me in the bathroom, middle of the night, I'll cue that thing on without having to disrupt everybody else. Plus, it gives you a challenge. You're doing it in the dark. You're shaving in the dark, throw that light on, and you're kind of like you're playing a game a little bit, I guess. And then you can also optimize it with 4 different sizes for whatever you're looking for. And it's got that really awesome looking black chrome finish. So the thing is sweet. And if you don't have one already, go over and pick one up with a special discount from the Buffalo Fanatics. Go to checkout, put it in your cart, and then go over to the promo code and type in Fanatics, and you will get a special discount on the Lawnmower 4.0 at manscaped.com, as well as all your Manscaped needs. Fanatics, promo code, type it in, get that discount. All right. Madden. Now, I don't know how many of you play video games, and I'm not really a big video game guy. I'm not at all. I'll buy Call of Duty because my buddy's like, oh, you got to get it. No, everybody's on Call of Duty. You got to get it. You got to get it. Sorry, Don. I don't use it to shave my butt cheeks. My butt cheeks are pristine. I don't need to use it. I know it was a little bit too much information as you're getting into here. It definitely is. But I know there's people out there who might need it for that. And the Lawnmower 4.0, definitely the solution. So the Madden, it's the only video game I play. And the only reason I play it is because I'm a huge football fan. And what I like to do is I like to play the Bills season all the way through multiple times. And then every week when there's a Bills game that week, I will play that game 10, 12 times. So, if, week 1, Bills play the Steelers, I will probably play Bills versus Steelers on Madden 75 times between when the game comes out and when the Bills kick off in September. But there's a few things that I'm just absolutely blown away by. The fact that Madden decided to not consider the other fan bases outside of the teams that have Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. Do they not realize that 97% of NFL fans absolutely cannot stand those two guys because they're the two best players in the league right now? Or Tom Brady, of course, just won the Super Bowl. And, of course, Patrick Mahomes right now is the new number 1. They both were just on the cover over the last couple of years. And if you don't know already, those two are both on the cover this year, both of them. And there's so many things that went through my head when I saw this. One, what was it like for Patrick Mahomes to show up to that photo shoot? You just got your ass kicked by Brady in the Super Bowl, and now you got to go pose with him on a video game cover. I mean, I don't. How do you even swallow your pride at that point? Showing up into that atmosphere, I don't understand it. 2, I have a tough time going and buying the game now. I don't want to buy the game knowing that I have to all year as I play it look at Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady as I queue it up. I just wanted somebody else to get a chance on the cover. Literally anybody. The fact that they already utilized those two guys, it was bad enough. But now you're not giving anybody else a chance, a player in which most NFL fan base would rather see than those two guys. Just blew my mind. It's a little tidbit that I wanted to put in at the end here because I didn't get to get into it last week. But when I saw that, I mean, I was here and here's the problem I have with the covers is I'm dying for the day that the Bills get a guy in the cover and Allen or Diggs is going to be our best bet 100%. But I just worry that the Bills market is so small that they'll never put a Bills player on there. And I just think it's the unfortunate reality of the situation of, being a Bills fan. The market's not big enough to draw in what the Super Bowl winner will bring in or whatever else. But they also did put Peyton Hillis on it one year from the Cleveland Browns. So I guess anything's possible. But I am looking forward to the day that Josh Allen gets on the cover because I think that's our best chance. And it would sure as hell beat having to look Brady and Mahomes in the face every time I cue the game up. Saw somebody bring this up here. I didn't touch on it earlier, but I'll get into it a little bit now because it's a good point. Kevin K comes in and says, did you talk about Zach Ertz possible trade? Which one, Kev? The one that came out in March or the one that came out today? What is going on? What is going on with Zach Ertz? Has anybody heard from the guy? Has anybody actually heard from Zach Ertz recently? Because everybody's constantly saying he's going here, he's going there. Especially everybody's saying he's going to Buffalo. I haven't heard anything. People have been saying Bill's getting close to signing Zach Ertz. What seems to be once a week for the last 3 months. So I hear it again today. And the reason I didn't even think to bring it up is because I've read it 1,000 times. When is it going to happen? It's incredible to me that he has not moved at least to somewhere yet, not even just the Bills. I don't quite get it. I know he doesn't want to be in Philly, so he's got to go somewhere. It basically seems like he's going to refuse to go back to Philly. So it's inevitable that he's going to wind up on another team. It's just who. And with the Bills, it's frustrating because I'd love to have Zach Ertz on the team. And I know all you guys would too. And when you hear that it's close to being done, what seems to be on a weekly basis, you go through this roller coaster of emotion where you're like, oh my God, it's happening. Bills are getting Ertz. Could be a huge piece for the offense to get to that next level. You know, another weapon for Allen, kind of missing at that tight end position right now. Could it be Ertz? You know, you get all these thoughts going through your head, and all of a sudden it just kind of dies. You don't hear anything. And then a couple of weeks will go by. Zach Ertz, close to signing with the Bills. A couple of weeks go by. So this is continuously happening. So I am going to hold out on the Zach Ertz talk until it gets a little bit more solidified, because as of right now, nothing's changed since March, as far as I know. And I mean, I'm reading the exact same thing. Every time I read something, things are getting close between Bills and Zach Ertz. Well, they've been getting close since March. So how close is it really? Hopefully this one is a little bit closer than what we were told in March. But at this point, who the hell knows? So maybe this time next week, Zach Ertz will be a Bill. But I remember saying that back in late March, early April. So don't hold your breath. I will be back next Wednesday, of course, though, as I am each week. So I hope you join me again for that one. But as for tonight, I thank you so much for joining. And if you took anything from this show, stay off the Twitter beef. Stay away from the Twitter beef. Sit back on the sideline and enjoy it. It's free, but don't get involved. You're smarter than that. All right, Bills fans, back again next Wednesday, 8 p.m. for a smoke break. Until then, be safe. Enjoy your 4th of July weekend. I keep forgetting that's this weekend. Enjoy it. Have some fun. Get out in the sun, and I'll see you next week. Until then, go Bills, everybody.